Why haven't I played Halo 4? Is it even worth picking up? Variations on the same question, all of it ultimately asking, is it worth my time? Well, to be completely honest, Halo 4 is not a great single-player experience. That said, the multiplayer does show extreme promise. However, since this is an in-depth look at the single-player only, the multiplayer will be left to a later date.
Cortana.
I was put into service 8 years ago.
8 years.
AIs deteriorate after 7, Chief.
Now, Halo 4 had a lot of expectations on its shoulders. Bungie was gone, replaced by 343 Industries, and most people had simply stopped caring about its single-player offerings in the franchise. Why? Well, their campaigns were bringing increasingly diminishing returns, with Halo Reach being merely solid as opposed to memorable, not to even mention the missed opportunities of Halo 3. So Halo 4 was supposed to be that return to form, but it comes just short of being a great game and falls merely into the shadow of its predecessors. Yes, let's get this out of the way. Halo Combat Evolved is a superior single-player experience in almost every sense besides graphics. It's a classic, and it always will be. Halo 4 attempts to recreate the same sense of wonder and majesty present in the first game, but it is dragged down by a narrative that is simply dull, filled to the brim with dramatic miscues and continuity screw-ups. Let's take, for example, Cortana, voiced by Jen Taylor. There are a couple lines from her that come from nowhere. There is no context whatsoever. Here, let me show you.
Before this is all over, promise me you'll figure out which one of us is the machine.
Where did that come from? Why did she say that? Sure, some of you could say, well, Salt, haven't you read the books or watched the short films? Why, yes I have, and I am still baffled by this line. Nothing in any of the continuity of the universe has suggested why she in particular had to say that line. Sure, the theme of the Spartans being killing machines has been brought up before in the books, but not by her in any sense. Another dramatic foul-up is the line in the trailer.
I will not allow you to leave this planet!
Cortana.
I didn't mean to.
What was that? In the context of the narrative, it just comes across as forced. And to top it off, there's no payoff for that line. It just exists to be featured in trailers for the game. Cortana's arc of rampancy, basically insanity before death for artificial intelligences, isn't even resolved in this game, nor is a resolution hinted at in any way. She becomes tiring, not a character but a plot point, and a badly written one at that, which is a shame because her in-game banter with the Chief is otherwise still pretty strong. And she does get some good lines.
Seems like old times.
Ready to get back to work?
I thought you'd never ask.
In the end, she drags the game down all by herself. Now, one possible reply to that vein of criticism is that the actions of one character shouldn't drag down the entire game, but no, Cortana is merely the beginning. Take this scene.
Dr. Halsey.
You already know everything.
Who are you?
Dr. Halsey, you're bending history for your own favor, and you know it.
Why are you here?
When one human world after another fell. When my Spartans...
Why do you never show up in the game again? Oh, she's in the expanded universe. Well, why do I need to read every damn book just to understand what should be a pivotal plot point in this game? A good story stands on its own, without needing to wade through mountains of universe continuity to make sense. Think of Half-Life 2. A player could jump into that game without playing the first and still get a great narrative experience. I did. Sure, there are hints towards the previous game, but the story stands on its own without relying on barely seen characters we are supposed to care about in some way. Any characters who are from the first game are sufficiently developed in the second so that we can care for them outside the context of the first game. That's what Halo 4 fails to do. Nothing in the narrative is self-contained. We jump from one plot point to the next, with revelations and bodies piling up, and we aren't invested in what's going on. The nonsense keeps piling up. Why are we still fighting the Covenant? Who is this Didact? WTF is the composer? And what is the deal with humans apparently having fought the Forerunners before we were cavemen? There is a trilogy of books dealing with this information, but at the time of writing, only 2 of them are available, and that, once again, just illustrates the major flaw of this game. I repeat, why do we need to read all of the books just to get some context for this narrative? I am aware that the Spartan Ops in the multiplayer does provide some context for the story of the UNSC Infinity while it's exploring the planet with Master Chief, but it's not enough to provide a clear picture overall and not worth mentioning otherwise. Let's take a break from the bashing and try and focus on some good aspects of this game. For starters, well, this is one of the best looking games I've ever seen. Seriously, some of the vistas in this game are awe-inspiring, reminding me of old school science fiction concept art. The level of detail in the graphics is astounding, with some of the cutscenes coming tantalizingly close to lifelike, and they don't cross into the uncanny valley with the human characters. In terms of its graphics, Halo 4 does create some of that majestic experience from their first couple of games. On the surface, character designs do take a small hit, though the Prometheans are distinctive enemies. Master Chief is starting to look more and more like a tank, and the Covenant have had some major cosmetic changes, so much so that they almost lose some of their character from the previous games, and they just start to blend into the environments. It's not a major gripe though, I'm just nitpicking. Control-wise, this game still handles pretty well, as has been the case throughout the series so far. I never felt hampered by them in any way. Alright, back to it. It's not as if I don't care what happens to the Chief and Cortana. Everyone noticed the camaraderie that they've had throughout the series, and Halo 3 featured some close bonding between the two.
You know me. When I make a promise,
You keep it. I do know how to pick 'em.
But Halo 4 seems to have misunderstood the core of what made the two so compelling in their sparse interactions. As a result, everything that happens to the Chief is weighed down by badly forced rampancy romance. However, Steve Downes puts in a terrific performance as the Chief, and his animations in the cutscenes convey more effective emotions than any part of Cortana's incredibly sad face or lines could ever do. The other human characters aren't bad, they just fill space. With a sympathetic commander and an angry captain, they are tropes. You've seen them before in all other science fiction films and video games, but they succeed in their own terms thanks to some stellar voice acting. Also, how awesome is it that Commander Shepard managed to sneak onto this franchise too? I love that.
Captain Lasky. You know I come up here for my peace and quiet. I'm not interrupting nap time, am I?
The main villain, the Didact, is one of those guys who really must love the sound of his own voice. He sounds like a politician, saying a lot, but really saying nothing of substance.
In this hour of victory, we taste only defeat. I ask why.
He's supposed to come off as a big threat villain with ultimate power and a massive ego, but his presence comes across as more of a smartass, and I wearied of him by the time he was dispatched, by a QuickTime event no less, just to emphasize how worthless he was as a character. He's a cipher. We find out almost nothing about his motives beyond a vague revenge plot against humanity, and we never get a sense of the threat he poses beyond the fact that he just happens to have a really big ship at his command. Finally, there are the smaller plot points. The composer. We never get a good look at him, and we learn nothing about him, but apparently he's pissed at us too, so we've got to stop him. And who is this woman who appears to tell us about the Prometheans and the Didact? Don't know, don't care. The whole passage where Master Chief is forced to go it alone to take on the Didact because the captain doesn't want to help just bored me. I wanted to hate this captain, but I just watched the resulting cutscenes with glassy eyes and an expression that could be compared to my boxer's face after he's come in from the cold. Alright, let's bash something else. Did anyone ever notice how cheap the enemy AI can get? Oh, they are mostly fun to fight against when you have equally powerful weapons at your disposal, but the game suffers when it starts throwing armies of grunts with homing rockets at you, or the Prometheans who instantly teleport to you with no way to block them and knock you off of the platform. When the enemy has insta-kill options, this game can become a grind. The level design seems to have taken a hit too. Gone are the big, expansive, non-linear levels from Reach. There are almost no areas where you can get creative with your movements in this game. You are more directed, and therefore you lose some of the luster of the other games. There also seems to be an awful lot of places designed solely to let the enemy knock me into an inexplicable hole in the ground. It's not atrocious level design by any means, but it's not as good as it could have been. Don't get me wrong, the levels are mostly gorgeous, except for one where you're stuck in a canyon with Prometheans and crap weapons, also the worst design level. But pretty graphics cannot rescue a game with not a single memorable level in it besides the flying one, which tires quickly anyways. Think about it. Halo 1 had Assault on the Control Room, Truth and Reconciliation, Halo itself, the Silent Cartographer, heck, even the library was a memorable experience the first time you went through it. Halo 2 had the Delta Halo levels, High Charity, and the 10,000 Year War. Halo 3 had numerous set pieces and the Ark. Even Reach had a final memorable onslaught of Covenant to help us remember it. In Halo 4, all of the levels blended together with not a single outstanding one, and that is another fatal flaw for this game. The music in this game largely avoids the bombast of Martin O'Donnell's work on the series. Instead, it goes for texture and subtlety. It is an effective score, but once again suffers from having almost nothing memorable about it. There's no theme you can hum, nothing to get the blood boiling and the adrenaline kicking. It's just there, adequately trudging along. The sounds for the game are pretty well done for the most part, but the Promethean weapons lack imagination. Pew pew pew! And thus have no real impact like the shotgun or needler. Some final good points. The Prometheans are a unique enemy type, but they fall into predictable patterns and aren't a challenge to take on, though the dog-like enemies tend to get on my nerves. The AI is still challenging and full of character like the previous games. The flying Promethean enemies will even tuck and run if shot like the grunts, and this does provide some character to these new foes. They do bring with them a few new weapons too, but they are pretty much just variations on the same shotgun, SMG, and sniper rifle combo that we've had since the first game, and they just don't have the awesome feel of the other weapons. These are the only new ideas brought into this game, however. Everything else has pretty much been in the previous games, with slightly different designs and uses of course, but they are there all the same. So, after all of that, is Halo 4 worth your precious time? I would say no. Multiplayer is of course a different matter entirely, and I wouldn't blame you if you bought the game for it, but skip the single player. It suffers from a lack of real dramatic imperative, and don't say that isn't the point. If you present a narrative, then expect it to be held to the same high standards of other games and even films. Plain and simple, the narrative aspects of this game suck. This is not one of those games like Spec Ops: The Line or The Walking Dead where you can get enthralled by the story. My final rating for this game, regrettably, is average. This game disappointed me. The fact that it trumped up the relationship between Master Chief and Cortana so much and yet delivered so little on that promise just means that any emotional core this game attempted to have simply falls apart near the end. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.